Welcome to Syntax. Today we've got a bike shedding hot takes episode for you. This is where we're going to go into those questions that don't really matter, but kind of do matter. Like the questions like the typical one everyone always argues over is tabs versus spaces. And we'll talk about that. But we got some much more interesting ones, and we're going to go and pick a side and try to argue our case on each one. My name is Wes Boss. I'm a developer from Canada. With me, as always, is Scott Tolinsky. How you doing, Scott?
Oh, I'm doing good, man. Man, I had a productive weekend cleaning. I spent my whole holiday weekend that we just had for Labor Day. I was cleaning the house. I repainted all the trim because it's so dinged up. I got a paint bucket. I'm getting all the trim. I filled in the dents and stuff with spackle. I'm
Beautiful.
I use this a little those little plastic pry tools. I used one of those to get into the cabinets with a paper towel and clean out all of the little gunk and stuff. I detailed that thing, man, and I had a blast doing it.
You gotta get a steamer. You have a steam wand or something like that. We got one of those at our cottage. We always get flies and steam on the trim. Yeah, and we got a little steam wand, and it gets in all the cracks and stuff. It's good stuff.
That is something I don't know anything about.
Mm-hmm. All right, let's get on into the first one that we got here. This is in CSS. When you're naming your variables, do you name them after the color that they are, like -- red, or do you name them after something like primary, secondary, base, border, things like that, more of what they would do in your application? So what I'm going to put myself... I made these questions up, and I'm actually not sure right now. I think I'm going to tend towards the primary side of things. I will have a variable of my colors, but then what I'll do is take primary and assign it to red, because I've gotten in many troubles before where I have a variable called yellow, and then it's no longer yellow after you change it because it's the button background color or something like that.
Dude, yeah, I would say if the app has one color scheme and one theme and it's never going to change from that, yeah, I am using the color names. On the Syntax site, things that are yellow are yellow. They're not primary, right? It doesn't make any sense. But if I'm building an app with theming, or I'm building an app that has a lot of different colors, I'm actually mostly primarily using the primary type of flow. That is the standard way I do it, unless I am feeling lazy. And then
what about the color? Every site you're making probably has at least a light and a dark mode, don't you think?
Yeah. Does the primary color change, I guess, between the two of those?
Yeah, but I guess you could just switch. Would you make a variable called -- text or foreground, or would you just simply say
I do foreground.
In dark mode, make the text white, and in light mode, make the text black?
Yeah, I mean, I kind of do that. I use color scheme as a CSS property, but I do tend to use FG and BG for the text versus the background. That makes the most amount of sense to me. I prefer to swap a variable than have to reselect elements, things like that. Yeah.
All right.
Do you prefer snake case or camelCase? As JavaScript developers, oh my, Wes has brought a new head in here, and it's larger. I prefer snake case myself. Wes, what do you think?
Man, all of the arguments for snake case make so much sense. I just have not made the switch myself. I've been in many projects before, the Syntax website themselves, where we use snake case, and it makes a lot of sense. But I simply am still on Team camelCase for most of my projects by default.
Yeah, Team Camel for sure. I mean, I personally, man, snake case for me all the way. Not only do I think snakes are cooler than camels, I just tend to read this so much better when I'm looking at my code. And I certainly don't mind the fact that I'm the only one writing snake case. No, I don't mind the syntax of it and being different. It also, another thing that it helps me differentiate between is things that I've written and things that are built-in modules and stuff. I know some people would see that as a negative, the fact that many of the language built-in things are camelCase and that your things are snake case. But it helps me read and it helps me stay organized. Snake case all the way for me, folks.
All right, when you're writing JavaScript, do you prefer to export default from a file? Like you have one file and there's one main thing that happens in that file. Do you prefer export default, or are you using export, like a named export from that file, and why?
I am almost always going to export named, because for me personally, it is so much more predictable, reliable, extendable. If I add another module to this file, I don't have to worry all of a sudden about changing anything else in any other file. To me, it makes the most amount of sense, and I will use this 100% of the time.
Yeah, I agree. Unless I'm using something where the convention is the main thing exported from this file, like routing, right? Like you have like an index.tsx in a specific route, and the main thing that you export from that will be your layout or your page. Otherwise, if you are importing that anywhere in your application, I'm going named export all the way. And I find it much easier to have the autocomplete import. I find it much easier to rename things. You know, if you're refactoring code with a default import, it's kind of annoying. So I'm on team named export all the way.
Okay. Do you prefer barrel files or importing directly from the file itself? A barrel file is when you have an index file at the root of a directory, so therefore you can import things essentially from the directory itself. It kind of scoops up all the exports from the files and then re-exports them into, so you can import directly from a directory. Which do you prefer to do?
Man, I 100% don't like barrel files because I find it's just another file to make. I don't like any of the magic of having to explicitly import from like a directory and just assume like an index file inside of there. I don't even like importing without the extension on it. You know, I want to import .ts in all of mine. I just want to be as explicit as possible. I think the whole require Node.js lookup tree is very complicated, and it's a huge pain once you're switching different environments. So I'm very much of just put it in a file. Even if I have like a file that is named like format money and I'm putting that in another folder of the same name, I'm totally fine with that. I much prefer that over just like an index.ts in my project.
I am going to say I agree, especially because I think that like earlier in my career, I thought it was style over substance for me. I thought, let me make you I'm going to come out of your ear here. I thought that specifically it look so nice to have to have just the import from a directory. But I didn't necessarily think about the logistics. I didn't think about tree shaking, code splitting, those types of things where like you're really trying to reduce the amount of things anything loads at any given point. Like I shouldn't have to load every single file from a directory when I'm importing from one directory. I shouldn't have to if I don't need to. So for me personally, it was definitely a style over substance thing. And once I was just like, why am I doing this? Like, what am I getting out of this? And taking a look at it from a more objective point of view, I realized there wasn't any single good reason to do it. So I'm not doing barrel files.
I think the one good reason is if you are like publishing a library where you want one, like all of your APIs that are going to be explicitly exposed to the user is what you're going to be publishing. In that case, a barrel file works. But yeah, all the tree shaking stuff, that's all been fixed in all the bundlers. So I don't think it's totally necessary anymore. It's just more hunting around trying to find what you want.
Oh my God.
Do you prefer a function declaration or a function expression? And the difference between those two are a function declaration is where you write the word function and then the name of the function and then the whole signature. And a function expression is where you are sticking a function into a variable. And this could be an arrow function. This could be simply just saying const do things equals a regular function. They are different in how they work given the way that hoisting works. But other than if you understand how hoisting works, they are I don't know, for a while we saw a lot of people just doing the function expression, sticking an arrow function in a variable, but I am very much of the mind that a function declaration is the way to go. I much prefer that. The only pain in the butt is that with TypeScript, the hoisting problem bites me in the butt, and I have to often do, like, if you want to check if a variable exists, you have to do it in every single function. But other than that, I'm a big fan of the declaration.
I am a big fan of function declaration as well. I just feels like it makes less sense to me to make a variable. This is stupid because so many of my decisions are aesthetic and ergonomic based. But to me, it feels like it makes less sense to just declare a variable to equal function when it's like we have a keyword for that. Function is the thing. It's the function declaration. Like, just do it that way. It just feels unnecessary to do it any other way, personally. Mm-hmm. Do you prefer, Wes, inferred types in TypeScript or explicit types in TypeScript? Dear God.
I'm running out of these fun ones that I made. I should have spent a little longer working on them. I used to be on team infer quite a bit because when you made changes up your tree, it sort of like filtered its way through much more easily. However, I find that with AI, it's often better to have more explicit types. So I've sort of landed on like two things. One, is this an external API that will be imported and used somewhere else in it? If I am going to be importing this function or this API somewhere else in my application, I'm going to make that explicit. And then two, if this is something where AI is going to need a little bit of help in that, I will also make it as explicit as possible. Otherwise, I love leaning on inferred types. I find them very handy. And some TypeScript, even if you use some of these libraries, like a lot of the TanStack stuff, it's inferred all the way down. You're not actually writing any types yourself. It's just inferred, and you just have full type safety all the way down. So I'm going to put myself maybe in the middle of that one, given that I will be explicit when it's necessary.
Wishy-washy here is what you're saying.
Yes.
You're a flip-flopper. I'm going to put my flag in the sand on explicit types. We're talking parental advisory here. That's what I like to have here. For explicit types, I'm dropping F-bombs in my types. No, I personally think that it is, for somebody who likes things so streamlined, this is one of the absolute things I do not mind being verbose on. It makes things crystal clear. To me, it like clears up anything. It finds little bugs. Yeah, you could say, okay, your function returns this, and therefore having that be inferred, that makes a lot of sense. But for me, if I'm writing code, I can write the inputs and the outputs first as types, and then I can write the function, and then I can know if there's anything potentially in that function that would cause an issue there. Like, it's stopping me from writing potential bugs. Now, granted, you can just not write those bugs in the first place, whatever, but like, I like it being explicit personally, and I certainly do not mind having the extra bit of text in my files.
Let's talk about Sentry real quick. Absolutely hilarious. The Sentry.io website now has two things that's hilarious. So the new tagline is, someone's got to babysit the bots. So if you are working on anything AI, things will go wrong, and you're going to need Sentry in there to help you find out what happened and help you fix it. And a lot of times it will just automatically fix it, and it can go as far as just send a pull request to you. So that's really cool. But also they have a marketing mode toggle on their website now where you can like turn it on, and it will simply just give you a chat box. No marketing copy, no value props, no obligatory logo rivers. What's the point? Everyone uses it already. The fact that you can't be fixed. It's just a chat box of ask me about features and troubleshooting, blah, 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 blah. So check it out, sentry.io/syntax. That's going to get you 2 months for free. All right. Do you prefer a variable that is long and explicit as to describing what it does, or do you prefer a variable that is shorter paired with a comment above it?
You know, this is one of those things, again, when I was a young buck, I was like, let's name background BG. Let's name color CLR. Let's go as short as possible for no stinking reason. And I have grown up. And that is one of the reasons why I absolutely go for long and explicit. Let's give me as long as you want, because it, for me, tells me exactly what the dang thing does. And that is such a, man, I don't mind writing comments too. I'm going to say I'll write comments with this style, but I have no need for things to be short. Like my computer's got gigabytes on it. I'm not counting characters here.
And you got the screen real estate for it. I agree as well. I think that I will opt for a longer, more descriptive variable. The comment will get lost as soon as you import that thing into another file, whereas actually having the name in the variable it does not get lost, and it brings it around with it. So I'm a big fan of more explicit. I don't go nuts with it, but I certainly have been in the opposite situation quite a bit, where the variable, I'm not sure exactly what it does, or I'm not sure what value it is. Is this in pixels? Is this in rems or ems? How am I bringing this in? Is this a variable? Granted, TypeScript does make that a little bit easier, but still, I'm prefer long. And I'm also, maybe we'll follow this up with a mini one. A lot of people say you don't need comments in your code. Should your code be able to self-document? What are your thoughts on that? I love comments. Comments all day long.
Yeah, please, sometimes telling you simply what the thing is and what it, what its name is and what act it does doesn't give you enough context about even I don't know, say just quirks, but the things of the way the application actually integrates and works with each other. I mean, personally, I like comments. I comment all day. I got no problem with that. So yeah. Wes, do you prefer to rebase or do a merge and commit?
Man, I have flip-flopped back and forth so many times on this. I don't like the merge commit because it muddies up the history, but I also don't love the rebase a whole lot because I find it a pain in the butt as soon as it's been rebased and put into a single commit. Then I have some other code that's dependent on this, and then I have to rebase that, and I find it to be a bit of a pain in the butt. So I lean on my repos a little bit more towards the merge commit. The syntax website we have on Rebase, and it's okay, but I much prefer to just squash my own commits, make sure everything is good, and then just have a single merge commit and happy with that rather than rebase it.
Yeah, for sure. I am going to say I merge commit because it's just how I've always done it. I don't necessarily have the problems with it that, I honestly don't. What am I gaining by rebasing that I'm missing? I don't know if I am. I don't work on a big team. I work on a small team, or I work by myself. So I'm sure there are definitely things that the reasons why people use Rebase are very valid. But for me, it's I personally don't hit those things in my day-to-day life because that's just not my general workflow. So for me, the merge commit, flow just has always worked fine. So stick with it. Yeah.
All right. When you're doing an event listener and you need to pass the event as a parameter, are you using EV, or typing out the full ass event?
I'm doing E. I would only ever do E, which is interesting because I also do E for error, which it feels like that should probably, I do E for error, I do E for event, and then only at this very moment am I realizing is there some kind of conflict there. This is not something I've ever thought of before.
But is it a conflict? Actually,
well, it hasn't been
sitting here bite shedding about it. Yeah.
No, it hasn't been a conflict actually, and in fact, this also is a conflict with my previous answer of long name that describes what it is or does. But for some stupid reason, things like errors or events, that's one of the few things I'm willing to make an exception for.
I have a list of things that I allow explicitly in my ESLint config, and E. And these are also variables that can go unused. REQ for request, RES for response, E for event. I never do E for error, because what happens if you're catching an error inside of an event listener? That's a bad time. Then you have to like rename things. So I always do ERR for error. With TypeScript, it's a little bit less of a problem because you have to explicitly type it if you're defining your event handler outside of a listener. So I'm on team E all day long. I ain't got time to type event. People who type EV, what is this?
What? Yeah,
you're a bunch of weirdos. Pick one.
No.
Pick a side. EV.
Pick a side. Yeah. I agree with that. Now here's one that is a classic.
Yes.
Tabs or spaces? Do you prefer tabs or spaces?
I'm on the same team as the underscore, where I have fully understood that tabs are better because it's less characters. Anybody who's using a tab character can adjust visually how big it displays in their editor. At first, the argument for spaces was that tabs show up really funny when you're like viewing source, or it shows up really funny on a lot of editors. Those are solved problems. You can change the actual tab one. And then quite a few of my projects still use spaces, but I've switched over to using tabs simply because it's one character. You can adjust how big they display in each one. So I'm a big fan of that.
Yeah. I am a tab man all the way. I use tabs. It's an easy thing to change over to. I used to use spaces. You just change a setting in your formatter, your linter, whatever. You're done. That's it. Bingo. Who cares? Tabs all day. It makes the most amount of sense to me. You can change the space in the editor. Tabs to me make the most amount of sense, and I am firmly in that camp. I actually don't even understand the argument for using spaces. What is it?
I don't even know all of the arguments for spaces are kind of moot. They
don't make any sense.
And ideally, it's like it doesn't really matter. It doesn't matter. Like it doesn't. But this is the show where we're talking about it, so it does matter.
I think it matters, honestly. If you have two things and one of them makes a lot of sense and the other one doesn't make any sense, that matters. All right, do you like big line height or small line height? Which one do you prefer?
Man, I am firmly in the camp of small line height. I don't know how these PHP developers do it, where they have 6 lines of code on their screen at once. I'm all about having things feel calm, but have high amount of information density. Part of that comes from being able to screen record, and you don't really have a lot of space when you're screen recording. You want to show as much code on the page at once, but part of that is just like I don't feel like scrolling around as much as I want. So I'm firmly in team small line height here.
Yeah, I am in team small line height in practice and big line height in concept. I'm the poster child for somebody who should like big line height because it helps me read and stuff like that, but I just can't stick with it. What I end up doing is I've done this multiple times. I set my line height to be decently big, and then over the course of a week I'm like, this is feeling a little spread out, let me move it down just a little bit. And that happens 8 times until I'm at the original line height that I was at before, where I'm like, this is just feeling not right to me. So I end up always rocking with a small line height, and it just, to me, feels the most normal. I don't have any issues with it. I like to see all this stuff on the screen at one time.
All right, this is another one that I think comes from a lot of like older coding, and people still follow. And this is hard line length. Like you say, I want to be 80 or 120 characters in, or do you just let your code wrap around? So if you're chaining a bunch of methods, is it fine to let it wrap around? I'm curious your thoughts on this, and I think there might be some it depends here.
So I tend to keep it as vertical and thin as possible, but in practice I end up just using I don't use either of these. I don't have it wrap. I have it scroll side to side. And because of that, I do tend to make it a line length in terms of when I code, I keep it all vertical.
Yeah.
But I don't have anything forcing that. And I don't also have a line wrap because I like one line per line, and that line wrap to me is obnoxious. So if you were to make me be in one of these camps, I would say, give me that hard line.
Wow.
But in practice, I just end up scrolling. I'm a VS Code user. Now that I'm a NeoVim user, maybe that changes. Who knows?
Man, I love line wrap, and I do put, I think I have 140 character limit, and basically I don't necessarily care about either of these because I just let my formatter take care of it for me, but I do turn on my wrap and have it wrapped around. The one thing that I absolutely hate about Prettier, and this is not fixable, is that if you have like a paragraph tag with like a very long sentence in it, Prettier will chop it up into multiple lines, put them each on their own line, and that drives me nuts because it's a sentence. It should wrap, not put each on its own line. If I want to select all of the code on that, and I'm selecting over multiple lines, so that drives me nuts. I much prefer to have my things just wrap, but I put a 140 character limit on my formatter so that if there is a situation like chaining array methods, then they'll just stack them each on their own line, and it's quite a bit easier to read that way.
I think out of all of these, this is the one we disagree on the hardest. I would never want a one line. Like if something extends visually onto multiple lines, like I don't want that to be one line.
Man, all day long. Love it. Because like my VS Code will indent it a little bit for me, and it's very clear to me that is a wrapped line. And almost always it's like a long array of items or something like that. That's another thing I hate about Prettier is if you have an array of like 100 items, it will just like format it so that every item's on its new line. I wish you could just like turn it off. There's some extensions and whatnot, but I don't feel like fussing with that.
Yeah.
Beautiful. All right. That was fantastic. Little bike shedding moment. It's so funny because none of this stuff really matters, but it also is, it matters a lot and it's fun to talk about. So let us know down below. We'll do another episode. What are your, like, I call them ant hills that you would die on, you know, things that you don't necessarily matter, but there's a hill you die on.
Yeah. What's interesting, Wes, is when I go through this list, the amount of things that I've changed my opinion on is like almost all of them. Like I've changed my opinion on many of these things over the years. So some of it is maturity. Some of it is like really understanding the benefits of this or that. But it is crazy as you grow in this industry, your taste will change. So again, a lot of these things are taste based and some people want to act like they aren't, but many of them are just taste based for sure.
All right. That's it. Let us know down below what your anthills that you'll die on. We'd love to hear them and we'll record another one shortly. Peace.